Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transforming Woeverload to Wonder workshop. So if you haven't done this yet today, let's all take a deep breath in. And just notice as our stomach expands and exhale. Noticing as it falls. Taking a few intentional breaths. And asking yourself, how did that feel to check in with yourself? Is it something you have a practice doing? Is it something that's new to you? Because sometimes we don't realize that when we aren't checking in with ourselves, that means that there's so many things building up and we don't realize they're there. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing our presentation. All right, so hopefully we're all seeing, there we go, we're all seeing the slides. And someone text me who's on this live if you don't see the slides. So this Transforming Woeverload to Wonder workshop really came from first going through this experience myself and also hearing from so many of you that there's just so much happening and we're kind of getting lost in it. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm Lori Robin and I'm a shit shifter. And so what that really means is that I guide people as they shift through the shit that comes up in life. Sometimes that's really joyous shit that we just aren't realizing that we have some challenges with embracing. Sometimes it can be hard to accept good things happening to us. And sometimes it's the really heavy, shitty shit where we're really just like, how is this happening? And what's really impacting me? And so through this process, I'm able to really hold space and to give people different ways to dive deeper within themselves. And in a way that's really based on fun and play and isn't about it having to be a very sorrowful experience, but it's actually just about getting curious. And so I do this through improvising. And improvising is a process that I've created that's based off applied improvisation. And what it really means is that you're living life with opportunistic resourcefulness, where that life provides us moments for us to experience. So these are those opportunities. And then when we improvise our response, magic can happen. So we're having a spirit of resourcefulness as we go through our days. So it's less, what this looks like is it's less about having a really set idea and expectations for how things are going to go. So for example, instead of saying, I'm going to go to the post office and everything will be going great and only allowing that option, what happens is if we get to the post office and realize it's closed, we suddenly have the ability to take that breath and think through, oh, you know what? Now I realize that I just went to the wrong location. The one down the street is actually still open. So in that instance, we let go of this idea that it had to go our way. And we realize that we actually have this wealth of knowledge within us. And that when we're improvising our response, we're able to first yes and what happens. Like, yes, this post office is closed and I'm feeling some type of way about it, and that's okay. Then we get curious, well, what else could be true? Oh, again, now I know that there's that other post office, and then I can go there. And from improvising, what then happens is instead of being really down for like the whole day perhaps about our schedule being thrown off or whatever happens, instead we're able to course correct in the moment. So we spare ourselves a lot of the emotional expense and trauma of really stewing in something that happened and really being able to navigate through that and really feel the ease that comes with embodying what it means to flow through things. And so I have a question. What would you need access to so you could be present in those moments as they happen? So go ahead and just feel this through. What would you need access to? What would help you in those moments of taking that breath, of validating your experience as very real and the impact on you is real, and then getting curious about how else you can respond that maybe isn't on autopilot, that maybe comes from a place of choice. And if you have your answer, I want to compare answers. And there's no right or wrong answer, but I believe my answer might be as simple as we can get. You need access to yourself. I know, it's so mind-blowing and it sounds too good to be true, but it is. If we don't have ourselves, how can we connect to the moment? And yet, we're least likely to have ourselves with us. And what I mean by that is, especially if you're taking care of little ones, or you're holding down multiple jobs, you're a caregiver of some sort, or you're simply just lifing, there are so many things that you're doing on a daily basis that we don't have access to ourselves. We pack up everyone in the car, we get our itineraries ready, we have this idea of how our day has to go to be productive, and then we realize that we don't have any room for ourselves. And if we wanted to take ourselves, how would we even know where to start? How would we know what that really includes? And so oftentimes our bodies are carrying us through life, but what they're not doing, because we're not able to access it, is actually bringing our inside content, so to speak. What's inside our vessel? That part of us isn't something we have access to. And how much access we have to ourselves drastically impacts how aware we are of Woeverload as it creeps in. And if you weren't able to see any of the other posts or material on Woeverload yet, Woeverload is when you literally can't even, because you're waking up and starting your day already at your energetic and emotional capacity. So these are the days, maybe series of days, weeks, months, sometimes years, where one of the first thoughts or feelings that you have when you wake up is, again, because your system, your body is already trying to share with you that there is no room for more. There is no ability to access your day. So on days of Woeverload, that means that any wrench that gets thrown in your routine, anything that comes up that was not planned for, can be extremely triggering and traumatic because we don't have access to that breath to be able to pause and pivot and find the course of most ease. Because having access to that mindfulness, unfortunately, is a privilege in the society we live in. And we all have a shit mountain without realizing it. So this is an energetic shit mountain, and so it is within us. And it's what we're carrying around day to day to day. And sometimes this actually will manifest as our bodies changing in shape, size, functionality. We might notice our joints creaking a little more. We might notice getting winded doing certain things. We also might notice that we are just numb. And so what happens is over time, this shit mountain is just filling at capacity. And yeah, it might grow a little bit, but we come to a point where the mountain cannot grow anymore. And so when something suddenly pierces the surface of that mountain, so a triggering event, suddenly all of that pressure that's been building up inside of our mountain explodes out like a volcano. And from the surface, it looks like that exact event that just happened might be what we're reacting to. But what we're reacting to is actually the accumulation of all of the things that have been shitty in our recent and not so recent past that have all been pressurized inside our bodies as they've been transformed into this pressure cooker. And because we aren't literal mountains, instead of creating diamonds within ourselves, we're literally just creating this really explosive, volatile, heavy feeling that is really blocking us from connecting with ourselves. And so right now, we're going to do the first of our embodiment practices. So we're going to take a few really deep breaths, as full as feels comfortable for you. We're going to hold each one for 3 seconds. And while we're holding it, we're going to be noticing what sensations we feel in our body. Where do we feel the most pressure? Where do we feel the most discomfort? Where do we feel the most tension? We're going to then exhale after those 3 seconds and repeat that about 3 times. So really feeling into where because what that is that's that pressure of your shit mountain. Where is that really storing? Where is your emotional and energetic residue feeling the most stuck right now? So we can go ahead, and if you're seated, you can just check your posture and make sure that you have access to taking a full breath if you are able to. So we're going to inhale as fully as it feels comfortable. Hold for 3. And exhale. Repeating at your own pace, so that way you can really feel where that pressure is in your body. Exhale fully and completely. All right, so now we've located where the pressure is feeling the most intense inside of you. And so if you do have something to write with, you may want to write down just what location that is if you don't feel like remembering it, because we will be coming back to that. And so when we're in Woeverload, this might look like numbing out, being really reactive. So things that normally wouldn't get your attention or wouldn't feel overwhelming are feeling overwhelming right now. Sometimes there's this sense of what other people would call forgetfulness, but it's really that we don't have access to the mental energy it takes to be fully present. There might be some heightened anxiety, and generally any sensation or feeling that you would ever lump in the category of wanting a redo button. And often we don't notice that we're in Woeverload until we've been there for a really long time. And so that could mean that for weeks, months, maybe even years, we've been in this state and it's become our new normal, but it doesn't have to remain our only option. So what might relief look like? What if it's this wondering of what's below the surface? What's really going on, and how do we actually feel about it? Because once we're able to identify and acknowledge that we're experiencing Woeverload, we can yes and it. We can really validate, yes, this is happening and it's having this impact on me. And sometimes what we believe is the cause or one of the leading factors is just one of the most recent ones, but we don't really know how far down the stuck energy is in our mountain. And so it might actually be something that started in childhood, something that started in adolescence, or when you first moved out from home. There could be something there that's really the foundation of it all. And so how could we find that relief? How can we go about it in a way that it doesn't continue to overwhelm us? We can cultivate our selfship. And so a selfship is really how we can relate to our full selves. So we're going to pretend to really imagine the order of operations, and we're going to go ahead and look at the parentheses first. So mind, body, and spirit, that is us. We are made up of those three things, but we seldom have access to it. And when we embody that relationship, so we're really relating with each part, we have a way of feeling into, listening, understanding, and honoring our mind, body, and spirit. Then what can happen is suddenly we then have our full and truest selves, and that is our selfship. Oh no, yes, okay, I thought it skipped too far. Okay, so let's get curious. What simple shift can start a big conversation? So I'm going to check real quick. Yes, okay, we're on the right slide, everybody. So what to you feels like it's a simple shift? And simple's in parentheses because, again, we have to have access to this. So I would offer that a shift that we can make right now that can start this deep conversation is forming that mind, body, spirit connection. Because having a self-shift means that we no longer have to wait for Woeverload to happen to relate with ourselves. Because in our society, we have this expectation that we have to wait for things to get rock bottom or our absolute worst to suddenly be deserving of any relief. So what if we don't have to wait to that point? What if we can actually have an alive, in the moment, interactive relationship with ourselves? So that way we actually know how we're doing, what our goals and dreams, our hopes are. Having access to our joy and our celebrations, like what would that look like and how would that differ from Woeverload? And so right now we're going to think back to our shit mountain. We're going to Now practice something in a way for that mind-body connection to happen and for a self-ship to take root. So in this gesture we're about to do, you're going to be starting and strengthening and creating your self-ship. So we're going to take another deep, full breath, noticing those sensations, that location you felt earlier, and exhaling fully and completely. You're going to continue breathing deeply while I explain what we'll do. And so what's going to happen is on a big inhale, we're going to imagine that we have a blowhole on the top of our head like we're a whale or a dolphin. And then as we exhale, we're going to imagine puffing that air. Instead of it being out of our head, we're going to imagine targeting it directly towards that pressure point in our ship mountain. And we're going to imagine forming a pressure valve like a release. So that way, suddenly, that hard exterior of that mountain is able to crack open intentionally, and some of that pressure can come out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, take a full inhale, and now puff that air directly to that location. Sometimes it helps to contract your stomach as you exhale. So we'll do that 2 more times. And noticing what has changed about those sensations or that location. Has the feeling intensified or alleviated? Has it transitioned to other parts of your body? So perhaps instead of one very concentrated location that's very noticeable, there are more locations that are feeling less pressure. So now our body is distributing that load. So what's just happened is that by starting to form that mind, body, spirit connection in our self-ship, our body suddenly knows, hey, you upstairs in the brain, you're listening to us, you noticed us, and you offered us relief. And what that now means is that we have a different amount of access to ourselves. So we can do that now anytime we're feeling a moment of overload, anytime one of those triggering events happens during your day. So we can start shifting our shit before it settles. And since self-ship is a journey and not a destination, what that really affords us is that we can realize that this is something that we take with us. It's the lightest toolkit we'll ever have with us. We can use it at any time. No one has to know what we're doing if it's a moment that feels discreet. And it's also something that we can share openly with others. So that way, what is helping us self-heal can be accessible for others as well. And as we deeper into ourselves, what we end up accessing is our body wisdom. And that message that it wants to shout out is that we are the experts of our own experience. But what's happened is over time through conditioning or upbringing, just really being in survival mode for so long, we haven't had access to that truth. We haven't actually been able to know what is our experience. We might know events that happen, but we may not know what the weight or the impact is of how that's weighing on us. So something that from the outside we might think is just a pebble may actually be the bulk of what our shit mountain is, and that energetic residue that is just building up and layer after layer is accumulating. And so once we have access to our body wisdom, it changes everything. So now we don't have to wait until we're at Woeverload to do anything about it. We can know that shit is happening as it's happening, and we can shift it. We don't have to wait for it to settle. We don't have to wait for it to accumulate. We don't have to wait to be in any amount of pain to the point where all we can experience is that pain. And so if you're wondering now, if you're a little curious of what is buried deep within you, and how can you most easily let it surface on your own times with intention, when you have moments of stillness to hold space for it, if you have any of those wonderings, or how you can shift and transform out of Woeverload, Yes and Yesterday is a 5-week guided embodiment program for your self-ship to take flight. And so this experience is really having access to me as that space holder, as that guide, and introducing different ways to really find what your self-ship is in your own unique way, and really feeling the shifts immediately, because what self-ship is for me will differ for you and your best friend and your grandma and everyone else. Because my work and my belief is not about being prescriptive and saying, here's what to do. It's giving different options so that way you have more access to finding what works for you. And so through Yes and Yesterday, you're going to have 5 weekly Zoom sessions, weekly embodiment practices, prompts and resources, and lifetime access to the materials. And so when we think about Yes and Yesterday, what is our current reality? Our reality that we're living right this moment is accumulation of all the yesterdays we've ever had. And what we may not realize is that all of those yesterdays are directly impacting whether we have access to today. And so a lot of spiritual bypassing happens in the wellness field when we just say, just be in the moment, just be mindful, without actually giving options of how to access that. So through Yes and Yesterday, we're really looking at actually knowing what happened today, because it's tomorrow when we wake up, it'll be our yesterday, and it's going to be impacting us. And all of the yesterdays that we've even had this month are impacting us. So it's this idea again that each day that we have becomes a yesterday, and those accumulate, and then suddenly we have our shit mountain and we're not really sure what's in there. So if you're feeling curious at all about peeking back some of those layers, excavating out some of that sludge from your system, what that shifts is that then you're not waking up at Woeverload anymore, because you're making room to have more capacity. You're going through those layers as they happen, so suddenly you're waking up and you're like, oh, I have 10% of myself accessible today. Great, awesome. A week from now, oh, I have 25% of myself accessible. And it's about over time cultivating your self-ship, so that way you end up having access in a way that you're being guided and trusting that you're capable of honoring yourself, that any guides, God, spirits that you believe in are able to communicate with you, and suddenly your self-ship gives you a different way to connect with others as well. And so Yes and Yesterday begins on Wednesday, September 2nd. So every Wednesday in September will be Woeverload Wednesday. And this is part of a larger monthly initiative that's called Selfship September. So while it starts on the 2nd, folks can join at any time. And so if you would like to start on the 2nd, feel free to let me know. And so Yes and Yesterday is one payment of $234, 2 payments of $122, or 3 payments of $78. And since you can join at any time, you'll have access to all of the previous material. So if you join the 2nd week, you'll already have week 1, and you can review and catch up on your own time, and then share out any questions that you have, because this is about really being accessible to when you need it, and really using this Virgo energy that we have right now and through most of September to really tap in and nourish that relationship with ourselves, because Virgo energy is really about embodying holistic wellness. And again, just like being able to access our mindfulness, what we need to be able to access our holistic wellness is ourselves. And perhaps Yes and Yesterday isn't really where you are right now. And for anyone who wants a smaller bite, maybe start exploring energy work in other ways, I have other offerings and ways that you can sort of taste test my energy, see what working with me is like, so that way we can start building that relationship if that feels like a better course of action for you. So a few ways to work with me now is by getting a Nourishing Nodes reading, and this looks into how can you nourish your energy, what settings and practices are specific to you based off your human design, so that way there's less guesswork on creating spaces that work for you. And it's really about giving you permission to tap into your intuition and having a blueprint on how to start that process. You can receive an intro to human design reading. So for anyone who does not know what human design is, it's an energetic blueprint of how you are as a being from the point of your birth. And so I like to say it's how you are before life lifed. And so it really gives you a different way to understand a lot of how you operate and exist in the world and how other people may have been impacting you. And again, it can allow you to understand where a lot of that crud is coming into your shit mountain and how it's getting stuck. You can also experience EmbodiProv sessions, and those are oracle card guided yoga sessions and embodiment sessions. So that way, if you have a certain challenge you're going through or have an idea of the shit you want to shift and you would like for that to be really bridging that mind, body, spirit connection, those are something that are custom tailored and provided to you as well. And lastly, I offer shit shifting sessions. So this is when you're feeling a lot of mental pressure to figure something out. It might be an ongoing issue, something that keeps coming around. And for, the saying of like, for the life of you, you can't figure it out. This actually is me guiding your energy through your chakras in a really interactive, playful way. So that way you can experience what it's like to drop down from your mind and get into your body wisdom. So that way you have a different way of relating with yourself. So this is that's the most direct and potent way to experience that self-ship and that mind-body connection, because you're going to be shifting that shit through your own system in our hour-long session. So that way your body can even wake up to experience, oh, what is it like if now I have the microphone and like the brain doesn't. And so those are all also ways that you can work with me if that feels more aligned for you. And so I'd love to hear from you, whether you're interested in working more or not. And so I am on Instagram at @improviding, and you can also email me at improviding101@gmail.com. And I'm ready to shift some shit. So if you have any questions, you can reach out in both of those ways. And also, a lot of collective care is really about tuning in to our own needs so that way we can better identify others. But that being said, if you are aware of someone else who's feeling a sense of struggle, who feels alone, who doesn't know where to start, even if you're not sure if saying yesterday is an offering that's right for them, still connect them in any way if you feel that's right. So that way they can at least have access to this information and explore, because part of collective care is really understanding that until we're all self-healing, we're all still going to be harming one another, and we don't have access to that restoration and really reciprocal relationships. So if you don't believe anyone should be suffering alone and someone reaches out to you, by all means, I can be a resource if that also feels like the next best option for you. Thank you so much for coming. And again, I look forward to connecting with you any way you feel. And I'm going to go ahead and end this recording. Thank you everyone for showing up to Transforming Woeverload to Wonder.